Well, hello everybody. Good evening and welcome along to your Friday night rabble. Phoning here on the Rangers Rabble podcast. Plenty to discuss as always. It's never a quiet day or a dull day when it comes to Rangers. So we'll obviously chat about the game tomorrow at Ibrox against Hibs. Might be meaningless in terms of winning league titles because that's gone. However, in terms of arresting that home form that we've been on and finally getting a win under our belts, it definitely does matter. And of course, Hibs won't be an easy opponent because they're in pretty good form. So we'll chat about that. We'll also chat about stadium tours taking place in Spanish next Friday that seems to have caused a bit of consternation on X. I mean, to be fair, I've yet to meet any post that doesn't cause some sort of consternation on there. So we'll see what the lads have to think about that, amongst many other things, with me this evening to discuss all these things. And of course, take your phone calls. I have Lewis. Lewis, how are we doing?
I'm not bad, mate. Glad to be back. Had a wee 3-week hiatus there, so nothing like a good old phone in to jump right back into the deep end there.
Absolutely. And of course, a man who I don't get to be on many shows with these days, so a pleasure to be back on with him. It is Mark. Mark, how are we?
I'm good, mate. How are you? It's been a wee while. I'm fine. I'm absolutely fine.
Aye, not too bad, not too bad. As I say, always nice to get on a show with fresh faces. I say I don't get on with both these guys on a podcast very often, so it's nice for a wee change. Especially not having to deal with Martin's face for an hour. That's always nice. But evening, Timothy. We'll let that one slide on this occasion. As I say, this is a phone in. The number is across the bottom of the screen. I'll just read it out for you, just in case you can't read. It is 0141 628 7237. Any points you've got for the guys, phone in and make them, and we'll put them to them. This is, in effect, this is your show. You're running the agenda tonight. I've just got bullet points. So make sure you get picking up that phone. And would you believe it? 2 minutes and 45 seconds into the show, we already have our first caller. Chris is on the line. Chris, how are we?
Yeah, very good, gentlemen. How's everybody tonight?
Not too bad, mate. Not too bad. What's your point for the guys?
Yeah, I see a lot lately about a lot of people talk about Barry getting the job, and what it got me doing was actually looking at things and seeing where things sit. We've conceded 9 goals in 4 league games. Now you compare that to Clement's last 9 league games. He conceded 9 goals in his last 9 league games. So already we're worse off defensively. When Clement left, we were 13 points behind. We're still 13 points behind, even though we beat Celtic, and there's still a possibility we could beat Celtic twice and still not close the gap, which is bad. 3 out of the 4 games Barry's had in the league, we've had to come from behind. Compare that to Clement's 3 out of his last 6 league games. He's had to come from behind, so we're worse off there again. Now, somebody's actually said to me, but Barry Ferguson's not an experienced manager or something like that. But if you compare him to, say, Neil Lennon in 2010, when he took over as interim, Neil Lennon won all 8 of his league games and only conceded 6 goals in those 8 games. So we've already conceded far more. And when Mowbray left there, he had conceded 9 in the last 8 games. So Neil Lennon showed up the defence, but it seems that our defence has got worse since Barry came in.
Lewis, I'll throw that point to you. Has the defence got worse since Barry came in, or is it more the case that the defence has always been this shaky, and this is just, I suppose, the inevitable outcome of that, particularly when you think of the chop and change? Because when he first came in, we had Ciala, for example, was starting most games. He's not really been seen now since he got hooked after half an hour against Kilmarnock. So, I mean, Barry at least has shown he's not afraid to make early changes at times. But is that a fair point for Chris? Have we actually got worse defensively?
I think that's maybe slightly harsh on Barry. I think you're probably right with your latter point there. I think the defence has probably always been this poor, and bringing in an experienced manager and Barry Ferguson isn't going to change things overnight, unfortunately. I think a lot of the results that we've got under Barry have been maybe emotionally charged rather than being, any large tactical change or shift in how we play football. I think it's just merely a case of, the defence was like that before Barry came in, and Pep Guardiola could have come in his prime and still not got a tune out of this defence. So I do think that's slightly harsh. But just on I think Chris had mentioned as well about, people talking about whether Barry should get the job or not. Like, I don't know what you two think. Obviously, I'm a bit younger, so I don't have the same attachment to somebody like Barry Ferguson. And, just looking on him as a manager, I don't see a world in what he gets the job unless he goes on and wins the Europa League. I think, he wasn't a great manager before this, and I don't think it's changed my mind on his ability as a manager since he's took the job. I think there's a lot of mistakes that him and his coaching team have made that show a bit of, maybe a wee bit of lack of experience in the field. I would certainly not be thinking of giving Barry Ferguson the management role going forward. I think we need to look at a proper manager with experience, especially with an impending takeover. Like, the next appointment needs to be perfect. It needs to be perfect. There's absolutely no room for error with this appointment. This would be number 4 or 5 if Barry was to fail, and it would break a lot of people's hearts to see him go on and fail. So, just rounding it back around to the conversation Chris made at the start there about the management role going forward, I wouldn't personally be picking Barry.
So back here a bit then, Chris, on the back of Lucy's point, and a comment from Jimbo as well, channel member. He's saying you can only polish coal so much in reference to the call. I mean, is that a fair point as well, Chris? The fact that Barry has inherited these defenders. It's not like he's had a transfer window to go and try and do anything or bring anybody in. The youth set up in terms of defenders there, we don't really have many options. And obviously the first couple of games he came in, there was a few that were missing through injury, like Suter, for example, when we just came back in a couple of games into Barry's tenure. I mean, is this as much at Clermont's door, really, than anything else, rather than something that's just became an issue under Barry?
I think it's a lot to do with Clermont as well. I think Clermont's left them an absolute shambles to deal with. However, when Barry gets put in there, we're all over the place. We've had to come back 3 times in 4 league games. That's no great. You keep going on that trajectory, you're going to end up with a lot of bad results. Now, if I'm Hibs and I'm Aberdeen, I'm saying to my team, just attack them, because the defence is all over the place. Yes, it's great that we're fighting back and getting the results, but that's not sustainable to moving the club on. I do think there's been a lot of mess left behind, and there's probably a lot behind the scenes going on and things like that. But if we keep going on this trajectory of having to fight back every game and things like that, this season could completely implode, and the 13-point gap could get worse.
Mark, it's not an unfair point that Chris makes about the gap getting worse. And I will thank Chris for his call, by the way. That's a very good call there, Chris. Do give us a call back any time on the phone-ins. But, I mean, Mark, we could be in a position in a month's time where we've beaten Celtic 3 times in a season and still lose the league title by double digits. I don't think that's ever happened to either side in the divide as it comes to that, because that's 9 points you're taking off them. But it just shows, though, doesn't it, that the real problem is consistency against the rest of the teams in the league. And whilst Barry has inspired a couple of remarkable comebacks, you've got to say, 2-0 down at Killie, you win 4-2, 2-0 down, and then 3-1 down against Dundee. And to be fair, to the credit of the players, they kept going in that game. Once you go 2 goals down for a second time, you could throw the towel in. But it shouldn't take Barry Ferguson having to give him half-time bollockings all the time to get something out of him. So how much of that really rests on his shoulders, and how much of that is just, a side effect, really, of what he's inherited?
To be fair, from my point of view, I think that from what we've seen since Clement has left, it kind of shows that Clement wasn't really as bad as everybody was making him out to be perfectly honest. For me, it's an absolute travesty that we've gave teams like Kilmarnock, even Dundee, three goals at a start, really. Rangers team shouldn't be doing that. It's as simple as that. It's as simple as that. And I don't know, somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but did Clement ever get any team 2 goals at a start? As I said, for me, the only thing that Ferguson's installed into what is a poor team and a poor squad is a bit of desire and a bit of heart. And obviously that's shown by the results coming back to win after being 2 goals done. But even at that, you take the games as a whole. It's not been a great tenure so far for Ferguson. Don't get me wrong, as I said, that these things don't change at a flick of a switch. But I just don't know. I mean, for me, I think he's good for exactly what he's there for. He's there just to try and steady the ship. He's there to try and bring a wee bit of kind of what Rangers is all about, the ethos of the club. To let the boys know that are there, the players, and probably the kind of handful that are going to probably stay. Let them know what this team, this club is all about. For them, hopefully, to pass it on to new guys that are coming in. But for me, there's no way. I don't think there's any way where Barry Ferguson keeps the job and gets the job full time. I think that probably us, maybe no, obviously Lewis said that he's maybe too young to think about, but a lot of us are very much ruling, our hearts ruling our head a wee bit here, because if it wasn't Barry Ferguson, would we any of us be even mentioning keeping whoever the standing with the same results and the same kind of performances? Would we all be saying, oh yeah, we need to keep him? I don't think we would. I think that the problem is Barry Ferguson's is a hero to a lot of us. I think he's captained this side amazingly over the years, and he's done marvellous for the club, and he is dying a will. So I think that probably a wee bit of the fact that people are wanting to give him a go and we're way past the stage of giving people goes and giving people tries and rolling dices here, massively, miles and miles and miles away. As it stands at the minute, our neighbours across the road are about to equal our record, and I, for one, do not want them to beat that. I think that next season is an absolute must for us to win, regardless. So for me, to echo what Lewis says, this appointment of a manager, of a sporting director, and every other appointment that the 49ers bring in is absolutely crucial to this team, and crucial to this club moving forward.
I mean, look, you can't really disagree with any of that, Lewis. That, I think Mark is spot on there with what he's saying. But I think one of the points he made there was, next season you absolutely have to win no matter what, because obviously should they win, then they go into 56 before we do. Now, there's context behind that. I mean, let's not kid ourselves on here. A lot of that has ended up, through decisions that were made at board level, and previous administrations being handed to them in silver platter. They couldn't. I mean, at least 5 of the titles they won, for example, in the 9 in a row, they couldn't not win, given what was in the league and facing them. So you have to contextualise things, but it still doesn't make any difference in terms of the numbers. But it's not just about winning one league title every so often, Lewis, when you really, really need to. We really, really needed to stop 10 in a row. We did. We got over that line emphatically, actually, in the end up. But how do we get something, and maybe this will be what the takeover brings, but how do we get somebody in the door that can bring consistency? I'm talking winning 2, 3 titles in a row again. Nobody's saying you're going to win every title or win 9, 10s in a row, but throughout the 2000s, they would win 3 in a row, we'd win 3 in a row. That kind of was how it went, barring the early 2000s where they were kind of itchy-peachy for a while. So how do we get back to that type of competitive nature when it comes to actually challenging for these titles?
Well, I think, you kind of answered your own question within that point there, because I think the takeover is how that happens. I think that the current board or soon to be previous board's biggest problem was some very short-sighted views on how Rangers should be run and what success looks like for Rangers. And when we got 55, we didn't support the guy that had achieved possibly the biggest thing in our history up until that point. I mean, to where we came from to get there in that such quick succession, and the guy that had done that couldn't even be financially backed. When was anybody ever going to be financially backed? And then the next guy that comes in, who, in his own respect, was a Rangers legend as well, and Giovanni Van Bronckhorst, also didn't get backed. And then the guy that we did decide to back financially was probably the least deserving. And now we're in a position where the last 3 appointments have been failures, which just brings me back to the point that Barry Ferguson cannot be the next man to take Rangers forward, unfortunately. As much as we all love him, as much as he's such an important figure in this club's history, that importance isn't going to be continued as manager. He'll be thanked dearly for what he's doing right now, but Mark's right, that's the only thing that he should be doing, what he's been brought in to do right now, nothing further. The next guy needs to be the guy that's going to be here for the next 3 to 6 years to take this club forward and make sure we leave Celtic behind us and don't just focus on winning the next title, but winning the next 3 or 4 titles. And these American investors are exactly that's what they're coming in here to do. They're not coming in here just to win a league title and bounce. They're coming in here to build a dynasty, and they see that being possible with somebody like Rangers. And it's crazy because Celtic really isn't the issue. Like, we keep talking about Celtic, we shouldn't even be focusing on Celtic because at the end of the day, they take care of themselves. If you look at the record, head to head in terms of fixtures, I would not be surprised if Rangers actually edged them out. And if you take it out of the last 4 or 5 seasons, if we beat them more than they've beaten us, they'll know the problem. Like, we've beat them twice this year already, and they're 13 points clear. The problem is that we can't find a manager that comes in and knows how to deal with the dross in Scotland. And again, Europe also takes care of itself. We're one of the best performing teams in Europa League over the last 5 or 6 years. So they aren't the issue. The issue is bringing in somebody that knows how to set up a team that's going to come in and dominate this league. Absolutely dominate it. I seen a point, I can't remember what it was. It was another podcaster or show on Rangers, and somebody had made the point saying that, Celtic don't give anybody in this league respect. They don't show anybody respect, and that's maybe why we are capable of beating them, because they don't show us respect, and then we come turn up. But that also works when they don't show respect to anybody else, because that's why they destroy their teams. Whereas Rangers show too much respect, and that's how you end up having to come from behind in games like Kilmarnock and Dundee. It's time to bring in somebody that instills the Rangers mentality of old and going, nobody's touching us. Nobody is touching us. Absolutely nobody. And then we can deal with Celtic once we're at that stage.
Can I just jump in there? So, just on the discussion, because I think probably there's a bigger discussion to be had regarding who we bring in and what type of manager that we bring in. I was talking to somebody today and discussing. Somebody had mentioned like Mourinho, and had mentioned I'm trying to think of the other boy's name. But we were talking about it, and for me the big thing and the biggest problem is, never mind who you get in, it's selecting somebody that can play the type of football that they need to play at Rangers. And what I mean by that is, you need to be able to beat a low block. And there's not a lot of managers and there's not a lot of teams over Europe that have a manager that specifically can do that job. And that is a problem. I think this is a problem when the last 2, 3, however many have fallen flat, because that's something completely different. It's something alien to a lot of teams. And it just shows you the difference, because Clermont was good in Europe. We played well in Europe. We done really, really well, but we were set up to hit the break. And as soon as it came to bread and butter, 2 banks of 4, sometimes a 5 and a 4, it was so hard and it was so turgent to do. And you couple that with the fact that for me, we've had substandard players or a squad. if you look at the squad as a whole. A couple of injuries and you're absolutely gushed. But the biggest thing is trying to get somebody that knows how to play that attacking football, knows how to be in a dominant side that can take a team and take a game to another team. So for me, this is the bigger issue. You're bringing in your likes of Mourinho, defensive manager, great manager, one of the best managers it's probably ever been. But we know that he's not going to play that expansive, free-flowing football that's going to beat a low block, and this is the problem. I think that this is rather than bringing in somebody that's a name that's this and it's that. I think we need to specifically look for and recruit for somebody that can play the type of football that we need to beat a low block. That kind of, you've got 75% of the ball, but you need to penetrate. And that for me is the hardest part, regardless of names or whatever it is. It's somebody that, and that's going to be the hardest part for me. And it's that bringing it back to it needs to be the right person. So never mind a name or whoever it is. I think that it needs to be somebody that bread and butter. For me personally, forget Europe. Europe will take care of itself. But the biggest issue for me is the bringing somebody in that can beat that low block. And that is something that we need to do. And listen, I don't know if any of you know anybody in Europe that's very good at that or plays the type of football that can beat a low block. Off the top of my head, I'm struggling. So I don't know, as I said, but it's just my thoughts on it. And it was kind of the discussion today regarding it. And when obviously it got brought up regarding the next manager and what we're going to do and stuff like that, I just wanted to find my 2 pence worth in regarding that.
Yeah, I mean, Lewis, and we'll move to other things shortly, but Ian Thompson there saying that, this is why we need Scottish influence in some capacity, Marcus. Can be an assistant of sorts alongside a British manager. We have to prioritise domestic football. Now, look, in my lifetime, I've seen Rangers have 4 foreign managers. Only one of them had any kind of success at the club, which was obviously Dick Advocat, because he came in and won league titles and a few domestic trophies as well along the way. The other 3, Paul Le Guen in 2006 when he came in the door after Alec McLeish, which McLeish had ran his race at that time, but Le Guen was an utter failure. Despite how successful he was on the continent, particularly with Leon, he came into us and it was a car crash, although sort of similar to what Mark's saying about come on. Le Guen actually wasn't too bad in Europe. Europe-wise, he had that group stage where I think we lost 1 game. So he managed to find ways there, but not domestically. And then obviously Kishina, who had absolutely zero success at any time, not even in Europe. He embarrassed us, in fact, in Europe, did Pedro Kishina. And then obviously Clement came in, done okay Europe-wise, started well domestically, but from, I'd say, February last year, probably from that Motherwell result actually, last season at Ibrox, it went in a steep decline and it never ever recovered. So is Ian's point fair about it needing to be a British manager, potentially with some sort of Scottish influence, given the last 3 times we've went to Europe, it hasn't worked?
I mean, I think statistically it probably does need to be a British manager, but if Rangers were to exist for another 100 years, he can't really say that as fact, because there will come a point where there won't be any viable candidates that are British that Rangers will need to look at. So you can't just say, we need a British manager because all the foreign managers haven't worked and there'll not be a British manager available. I think...
Well, is it, just to come back to it, is it foreign managers as such, or is it maybe European managers that seem to be the issue? Because, I mean, when Ange went to Celtic, he didn't seem to have an issue. Some people mentioning Kevin Muscat as a potential option for us. He obviously former player, again an Aussie. Is it maybe the European philosophy rather than the global one that can be it? Because in some of these European leagues, when you're coming to these clubs, you get more time in the ball than you do in Scottish football, for example, which means you can play with Kishina when he came, for example. He'd been at clubs where he could play that more slower, methodical, build-up type of football that you don't get time to play in Scotland. You just don't. You get wiped out. And Le Guen was similar. So is it maybe the European philosophy that maybe isn't the solution for us, as opposed to just all foreign managers?
I mean, it's such a generalised statement. I mean, it's so difficult because there's hundreds of European managers that have different philosophies. It's just, the last two that we hired in Gio and Clement played, the method you're talking about, where a lot of that is either, well, in Gio's case, it was possession based and it was just sidewards and backwards football. And like you said, you don't get time to do that, and that's why he failed. Clement, strange. Clement set us up as a counter-attack team, which I never ever understood, because when you're a counter-attack side, you're usually a side that aren't dominant in your league, and you're usually a side with pace. That's two things that aren't true about Rangers. So why he thought that was a good idea to come in and try and instill they type of tactics was baffling. But somebody like Knutsen, for example, at Bodo Glimt, I mean, he plays high intensity, high possession, forward thinking football, and he's also in a league similar to the situation that Rangers and Celtic find themselves in, where he's the manager of a team that's far and away the best in that division. So he's got plenty of experience of playing low blocks, and then he takes that Bodo Glimt team into Europe, and how good have they been over the last 4 or 5 years? I mean, that's one option for you right there. And another one could be Russell Martin. I know it's not maybe the most popular answer, but in terms of attacking football, I mean, he's absolutely astounding. Southampton were like the second best possession-based team in the Premier League, despite being bottom. But if you transfer the tactics to a team that have players of a much higher quality to the rest of the league, then that works. Because who done that a year ago or 2 years ago with Celtic? Ange Postecoglou, very similar style of football, and what happened? They absolutely dominated the league. Absolutely dominated it, but they were horrendous in Europe. But like Mark says, that doesn't matter right now. Europe is a total afterthought. We need to get somebody in that just goes, I'm disrespecting everybody else in this domestic division, and I'm going to show what it means to be a Rangers player, and it's about attack, and leave everybody else behind us.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, as we said, folks, it is a phone in, and we do have another caller. Jack is on the line. Jack, how are we doing? What's your point for the lads?
How are we doing? I'm actually kind of glad that he's just said Russell Martin, because that's what I was going to come up here. I know I was going to get pelted for saying it, but I was going to throw in the Russell Martin shout just because of what you were saying before about the kind of dominating games and that's kind of the way he plays. But see, to add a bit to that, then do you kind of need to, if you're getting a manager like him, he's British, obviously, and the way he's played with Southampton in the Championship, do you then need to maybe rely on individual quality a wee bit to kind of maybe unlock it? If you've got that style of play where you're constantly dominating 70% of the ball every game, then you need to make sure you get the quality around it. Is it all about style, or is it players as well? Because Russell Martin, I don't agree with it, right? But it fits the criteria of what we're talking
about. Mark, Russell Martin for you. He done well with Southampton in the Championship, to be fair to him, but he massively struggled in the Premier League. Obviously, lost his job earlier this season.
I think, I would go for him. I wouldn't be overly upset if that was the case. I know that he's in that kind of same mould as what we were talking about, and Jack has got a good point regarding individual talent as well as, I think it's both. I think that we've lacked, especially trying to break a low block down. For me, you need players that are going to commit defenders, run at defenders and stuff like that, and possibly get past and get crosses in and get to the byline. When was the last time you seen a Rangers winger or any sort of attacking player get to a byline and put a ball in? Get behind a low block? It really, really doesn't happen. As I said, and that's kind of echoing my point that I made previously regarding, we need somebody that's got that style, but also we massively need far better quality than what we've got. I understand that there was constraints this season. Hopefully that's not going to be the case going into next season. But I think that regarding the way we've went recruitment wise, especially like this season, was young players. And the one thing you're going to get, although some of these young players are talented, young players are always inconsistent until they get a good really good few games under their belt, and that's when that consistency kicks in. But for me, I think the better quality youth or better quality youngster already has that consistency. And I think that, as I said, it's like some sort of a marriage of the two. You're going to need better quality players, but you're also going to need better kind of tactical nouns that can go and try and break that down, whether it be rotations, whether it be formational, whether, as I said, but you need somebody that's willing to play that type of football, that kind of fast-paced, high pressing, high tempo, and obviously mix that with the quality. Then that hopefully gets you where you need to be, as I said, because literally we've been banging our head against a wall for years regarding low blocks and trying to beat them down. It's just been turgid to watch. It's been absolutely awful.
Apologies. On mute, yellow card to me. I have to ask a question, Jack, just to follow up to that and throw them back to you, right? And this is a point that's been made in our comments tonight as well. Singing the Blues has said that it baffles me why people say no to Barry and want Russell Martin or Derek McInnes. Is that a fair point, Jack? I mean, why would it be no to Barry but yes to Russell Martin? I mean, are they not similar in terms of, well, I suppose Russell Martin has had experience at higher levels, granted, but in terms of years managed in the game, they're sort of even, and clearly Barry understands Rangers a bit more than what Russell Martin does.
I agree with that. To be fair, I think I've said it before on here. I'd give Barry the job just from what I've seen, because I can't think of anyone. But just from what I've heard, I've heard Andy Halliday talk about Russell Martin. I've seen a few other people talk about it, and then just before I came on, somebody said it, and it just kind of, I don't know, just the style of play. Like, do you maybe judge Russell Martin more on his championship, Southampton, than his Premiership? Because his championship, they're up there. They should be dominating games. Versus the Premier League team, he's never. I mean, look at them now. They got a new manager, and they're just as bad. We kind of, I don't know. I wouldn't want Russell Martin personally, but I just thought I'd throw the name in the hat, and just glad it got brought up before I said it, so I didn't get belted for it.
Yeah, no, listen, absolutely, Jack. Not wrong with that, and definitely great points. So thanks very much for the call. I mean, Lewis, look, and I'm keen to shift on to other points of discussion, so we'll kind of round it off here. But in terms of the Russell Martin thing, a question I would have, right, is that if he was to be appointed the manager, say they announce, right, Russell Martin will take charge in June, is he potentially going to be up against it because people weren't exactly enamoured by him when he came up here and played for us? He was rank rotten. Let's be frank about it. When he came up, now he's past his prime at that time, to be fair to him, but I don't think there was many people had a good word to say about him in that regard. And so, could that already put him behind the 8 ball if he came up as a manager? Well, and that might be unfair, by the way, but you know how it works up here.
I mean, certainly, some of your fan base would be stupid enough to have that view. I mean, it's the same problem with how people are looking at Barry Ferguson. You're not looking at him as a manager. The people that are saying they would give Barry a job, it's not because he's a good enough candidate for manager. It's because what he done prior as a player for Rangers. And let's be honest, that's the only reason that he's been given this opportunity. And if he was to be given the opportunity further down the road, that's the reason. It's not because he's a decent enough manager, and the experience is the same in terms of length of time possibly, but Barry Ferguson's shining light for his achievements in management was taking Celtic Hearts from the 4th division to the 3rd division, and when he done that, the finances that Celtic Hearts were given at the time were massively overblown to the rest of his division, and then he went on to Alloa and struggled, whereas Russell Martin dominated the Championship. Actually, they only finished. I think they went on to the playoffs, but in terms of style of play, they were one of the best attacking teams in the division. And people saying that they went up to the Premier League and he struggled, and he did struggle, but he still played the same way, and he still outplayed possession wise just about every team in the division except Manchester City. So if you want to correlate that with him getting a better squad, who's to say where it would go? You don't know if it's going to succeed, but underlying statistics would say it would succeed. If he came to Rangers, it wouldn't be the same situation. He'd have the second best squad immediately in the league. So if he was to play attacking football, then the problem of not being able to dominate the rest of the division would be solved. And that's just a fact based on his most recent job. Because he's managed to dominate the division below the Premier League and then continue the same style of play successfully, but no win games because of lack of the talent in the squad. It's not because he completely changed his tactics. So if he was to come down here and have the second best team in the division, I think people would be surprised. And 6 months in and he's successful, does it really matter how he was as a player for Rangers? I don't think it really does. Again, Giovanni Van Bronckhorst has lost his job and he was one of the best players in recent history to play for Rangers. I really don't think that matters. I think it matters how they perform as a manager.
Well, I mean, yeah, listen, Gio, I do think that he deserved to have more credit in the bank than he got. I mean, let's be frank, the guy was a penalty kick away from winning the Europa League. And as soon as he had a wee run of bad form the next season, he was out the door. Very, very. He didn't even get the kind of time that Beale or Clement after him got. He was out the door as soon as a couple of bad results came. St Johnstone, St Mirren, poor performances, poor results. But in hindsight, not so sure he should have been sacked for that, Mark. But, nevertheless, that is where we find ourselves. I'll just bring up this point finally. Warren Smith saying we got lucky beating Celtic and the Turks in the end. Result tomorrow will tell us much. We need to show serious ambition in the permanent appointment and get the best we can attract. Now, I agree with the bottom half of that we need to show a bit of ambition in the permanent appointment and try and get the best in class. I'm all about that. Did we get lucky beating Celtic? I mean, the first half of that game, we absolutely dominated Celtic. They had a couple of chances, but we could have been 3-4 up. And then, yes, we tired in the second half, having played extra time and penalties, of course, on the Thursday. But we showed a bit of spirit. We got pegged back to 2-2. Okay, when Johnson slipped, yeah, it's a wee bit of luck for the ball to break to Hamza Agaman. But it was some finish. So I'm not so sure it's lucky. I think we probably just about deserved a win that day, albeit against Fenerbahce. Penalties is a lottery, but overall, how much will the result tomorrow actually tell us with regards to that? Because I don't think it will tell us anything we don't already know about Barry, about this team, and about where we're at the moment.
I think it's probably still finely balanced. I think that if Barry gets a bad result tomorrow, then fucking all hell breaks loose. Simple as that. And you know it yourself. That's just what's going to happen. The last statement there, yeah, I wouldn't say lucky. I would say probably lucky to get past Fenerbahce. Yeah. I think for me, Celtic would deserve that. And probably the first leg against Fenerbahce was probably one of the best I've seen us play all season. So a bit harsh there, but yeah, I think that for the point of view of tomorrow, I think domestically has been our issue. Been our issue probably for the last about 3 years, really. And I think that the result against Celtic and obviously going through Fenerbahce's bought Barry Ferguson probably a lot more favour than it would have anybody else. As I said, same back to the statement that I made regarding the heart rule in the head a wee bit. For me, as I said, it is that finely balanced. It's on a knife edge, and I think that a good result tomorrow gives them something to build on. I think that kind of helps them regarding a couple of good results, a couple of bad results. I think it's 50-50 either way as far as I'm concerned in his tenure. So I think tomorrow at Ibrox we need a good performance and a good result. I think that leaking goals is, I mean, it's just getting ridiculous the amount of goals that we're leaking over a period. And I'm sure it was not at the start of the first kind of quarter of the league we were the best defence in the league. I'm sure I might be losing my mind, but I'm sure that was the case at some point. And I just, every time we get a corner against us, a free kick against us, a long throw against us, my heart's in my mouth. So I don't know. For me, that's a massive issue. And I never really got my say earlier, but I would think our defence has got worse since Barry's come in. So for me, I think knife edge. Massive game tomorrow from the point of view of whether Barry Ferguson can kick on and maybe have a decent run to the end of the season. You have a bad result against Hibs, then another bad result, and you know the story. Everybody was shouting and bawling, calling for his head. So, as I said, for me, and you know what, as well, it's a hard one. Just back to what you were saying regarding same kind of thing with Van Bronckhorst. Van Bronckhorst probably should have got more time, but it's a Rangers fan base. Rangers fan base, no matter what, as I said, they will turn two bad results, two bad games. They will turn on Barry Ferguson. Barry Ferguson will no longer be a legend, and it quite possibly could ruin his legacy at this club. And I know that sounds a bit harsh, but he's put himself on a line by jumping in and saying, "Do you know what? I'll take this job on." So I don't know. I think that these players they're very fickle. I think they're very inconsistent. I think there's talent there, but I think there's talent there when they feel like it, rather than working hard. And for me, always the bare minimum is 100%. No matter what, you give it 100%. And I think there's too many of them coasting and hiding. Unless we're doing well. If we're 2-0 up, everybody wants the ball. Everybody wants to have a shot at goal. Everybody wants to do a trick. As soon as we're 1-0 down, or 2-0 down, everybody's hiding. There's an awful lot of them. Maybe not everybody, but there's a lot of them hiding. So for me, it's finally balanced tomorrow, and it could really go anywhere.
Yeah. No, Jimbo, to be fair on that point, it kind of did for a while. And I've said it before, and we'll say it again. The treatment that Ali McCoy's received for the club and from sections of the fan base when his time came to an end was appalling. There's not a way this club should be treating a guy who's an utter legend, who, let's not forget, when Walter Smith had came back, he was as much part of bringing that success back as Walter Smith was, because he sat under the learning tree of Smith. Now, when he got the reins himself, it didn't work. We'll never know what would have happened, by the way, if we didn't end up getting chucked in the leagues. If he had been given, the way it was under Smith, and we were in the top flight and we were able to build for that position, we'll never know. But now, yeah, absolutely, he is beloved, and rightly so. But at the time, wasn't quite the case. So it can have, if not long-term effects, it can certainly have an immediate short-term effect if a thing like this goes wrong. And listen, I personally, I love Barry Ferguson. He was, for all intents and purposes, he was my captain at Rangers Football Club. Growing up, that's who was the captain of Rangers. Him and Fernando Rickson, obviously, because he did take the armband at one point. We'll not mention Gavin Ray. But, so of course I love Barry, and I want him to do well, not just for the sake of the club, but for his sake as well. But, you have to be realistic. But in terms of tomorrow, Lewis, and I don't care if we win the game by a bit of luck or whatever. We've not had much yet, let's be frank about it. So you take what you can get. But it is important to arrest that decline in home form we've had, because in 90-minute games of football, I know we won in penalties against Fenerbahce, but in 90-minute games of football, for the first time in the history of this football club, we've lost 4 games in a row at home. That's totally unacceptable. And I don't know where this came from, because up until Queen's Park, we were unbeaten domestically at home, and we'd only lost 1 in Europe at home, which was to the Lyon game. So how we went for that to losing to Queen's Park, and then all of a sudden it's collapsed. I don't think they've ever recovered for the Queen's Park result in terms of home performances, to be honest with you. So tomorrow is important. Hibs unbeaten, I think, in 14 or something in the league. Not going to be easy, but they need to go and get the win tomorrow, and they cannot give them a 2-goal head start.
No, I mean, I would just echo absolutely everything you've said. Hibs are, I think it is 14 or 15 that they're on now. They've really, David Gray's really turned their season around. A team like themselves that they started off so poorly, they've been in some really good form and changed the system. I think they're like a back three now with the 2 Cadden brothers at the wing back. So they've certainly managed to find something that works for them, and it's other than Celtic, it's probably one of the hardest games we could have for tomorrow. But it needs to be a win. I imagine Barry Ferguson was known as the man that has lost 5 games in a row at home at Ibrox for the first time. Like, that just cannot happen for for him, and you know what he means to a football club. They players just cannot allow that to happen. It's absolutely unacceptable. And you know, just taking the historical point out, you know, the next game is Bilbao, isn't it? At Ibrox. That's the following game. It needs to be positivity going into that, because you know, we talk about Europe no mattering, but this year Europe does matter because it's all we've got left. So we need to give that game absolutely everything we've got, and we need to take as much positivity as possible from hopefully a really good performance against Hibs, and prove that Ibrox is back to being the fortress that it was at the start of the season. Like you said, we'd only lost to Leon in like 30 odd games, so it needs to go back to that. Definitely, it's unacceptable. Like you said, a win, just a win. I don't care how we play. I don't care if it's 1-0, just a win.
Yeah, exactly. 100% right. And Tim, the point Lewis is making is, of course, if we lose tomorrow, then regardless of the fact that, of course, the first two of this home run can be under Philippe Clement, Barry Ferguson will be the manager whose name is in the history books, because he's the one that's in the dugout. Even though, yes, you're correct, technically it would only be, I say only, like that's acceptable as well, but it'd be 3 in a row for him, but it's 5 overall, and he goes down in the history books. It doesn't. It's like a manager leaving a club with a month to go, somebody takes over, that club gets relegated. Well, the manager who took over gets it on their CV, rather than the person who's probably responsible for it more. But I mean, Mark, in terms of tomorrow as well, one of the things, Neil McCann obviously done the presser yesterday. He was asked about Václav Černý, who obviously missed the Dundee game. He did say that Černý is still a doubt for tomorrow, so we're still not sure whether he'll play any part. I dare say if he does, he's more than likely not going to start the game, but maybe be on the bench. But how big a blow is it not having Černý? Because I felt against Dundee in particular, we missed that wee bit of pace and creativity on those wings. You know, we were having a measure of success when we were getting it out there, but Černý, and I know he gets criticised sometimes, rightly so, but I do think he brings you a wee impetus up top that you miss when he's not in the squad.
Yeah, for me, he's probably the only one that's performed to his potential this season in the whole squad. There's been bits and bobs from other players. There's been a couple of months run here and there and stuff like that, but I think probably he's very much the man that the whole team looks to as if, right, we need something, go and do something. So it really is, for me, it really is going to be, if he doesn't play, it's a massive blow at his side. I think that he's very much the guy that makes us tick. So I think I'm hoping that he's going to even start. For me, if he's fit enough, start him, take him off after 60 minutes. Hopefully by that point the job's done and you can rest him up. But I don't know. For me, very much seems to be we're flinging mud at a wall to try and see if it sticks. I think a wee bit at the moment. I think that we seem a wee bit disjointed without him up front. I don't know. For me as well, I think that probably Danilo, for me, links play well, and it might be a shout for putting Danilo in as the 10. But I think Černý, back to your original point, the question, I think Černy's going to be a massive if he's not playing. I think it's obviously it's shown that in previous games that he's not been there. So it's something that I think we'll wrap him in cotton wool and hopefully can make it tomorrow.
Hopefully, yeah. And again, folks, it is a phone in. The phone lines are open. You can call us on 0141 628 7237. You've got about, if you phone in the next 8 or 9 minutes, you'll definitely get on. We've certainly got time probably for 2 more callers if you're quick. So make sure you get the phone picked up. Don't sit there shouting at the screen going, oh, he's talking mince. That Mark talks absolute rubbish, or Lewis, or even me. Come on the phone and have your point and tell us why you think we're talking mince. That's the beauty of phoning. But Mark, you mentioned the guy there in Danilo. I think this goes for Eggman as well, because I've made this point. I made it after the Dundee game when, despite scoring the winner, some people were slating Big Cyril Dessers because he had umpteen chances and only actually scored one, which was one of the harder chances, which, I mean, it just sums Cyril up, to be fair.
Yep.
But Danilo, as you've mentioned, and Igaman need to start adding more goals when they're coming onto the park for me. I know Igaman got the goal against Celtic, which we all loved, but since he had that wee run of form, he said it himself a few weeks ago, he's not been at it. And Danilo, I know he's had injury problems, but I don't think he's scored since the equaliser in Paisley against St Mirren, even when he has came back. So they can't rely on Cyril having to score all the goals. They have to, when they're coming on, add something as well, surely, in that aspect.
Yeah, I think going back to Igaman, probably Igaman's the most talented, as far as I'm concerned, the most talented player in the squad. I think that playing him wide left and playing him as a 10 has probably been detriment. And fair play to the boy, he's willing to do that for the team and try and work hard. But I think it's knocked his confidence a wee bit. For me, you play him up front through the middle. It's finding that 10, and obviously that kind of left-sided player as well. That's been an issue. So we've been trying to, as I said, fling some mud at the wall, see if it will fit, see if it will stick. But I don't know. For me, I thought that the time we scored the most goals and played the best football, and I might be wrong here, but when Igaman was up top and Danilo was as a 10, I thought we looked more fluid. We looked as if we kind of liked to play well. The movement looked good. We created chances. We just seemed to tick a wee bit better. I think that at the moment we look a little bit disjointed up there, as I said, and I think we're kind of struggling for creativity. Other thing as well that's kind of pestered me a wee bit is Cortez might be fit. Why are we not even giving him 10, 15, 20 minutes? Why are we not trying to kind of get him into? For me as well, if he's playing well and playing the way we know he can play, I'm saying that very, very loosely because obviously he's only played a handful of games, but we've seen a bit of pace, a bit of talent, eager to shoot. Why are we not trying him on the left-hand side? I can't get my head around it. Why are we trying to shoehorn a centre forward on the left side of midfield, and why are we trying to shoe, as far as I'm concerned, Danilo, another centre forward, into a number 10 slot, or try and shoehorn a 10, i.e. Hadji or Barami, into the left side as well, when we've got a left-sided winger that's pacey, that can go both ways and likes a shot. I can't get my head around it. If he's no fit, tell us he's no fit, but don't just keep putting him on the bench. Rant over.
Yeah, no, 100%. Lewis, a point to put to yourself on this way, Igaman and Danilo. Shona, how doing Shona? She is saying she loves Igaman, but would favour Danilo in the 10 with Dessers up top. Is Danilo better in the 10 than Igaman? Not so sure. What's your kind of feeling on that? What would you be doing if you were in Barry Ferguson's shoes?
I agree with Mark. I think that the best Rangers have looked this season is when Danilo and Igaman had that short stint together. I think the difference with A2 and Dessers, I mean, obviously Igaman, his quality on the ball is that he's so naturally gifted that it's incredible. It's going to be really, really interesting to see how he develops as a footballer because his natural ability is absolutely insane. I think it's one of the best bits of scouting Rangers have done in the last decade or two, to be honest, to pick him up for where we've picked him up from. And Danilo as well, I think he's just much better on the ball than Dessers. So if Danilo's fit, as harsh as it is on Dessers, who's been scoring goals, I think that, like I said, the best we've looked is with A2 up top and no Cyril Dessers. But again, Dessers has been scoring goals, so unfortunately, I don't see him being dropped, despite the fact that it took him, 12 shots to score one goal against Dundee. There's games where we've played and the full team has had less shots than that and scored like triple the amount of goals. It's pretty mad, to be honest, but it's a difficult situation, the striker role, because you've just not really got somebody that's set in stone. I think that's been a problem for the last 3 or 4 seasons, to be honest. Even when you go back into like the rotation between Cholak, Ruff and Morelos, none of them really nailed down the position. Alfie in his latter years at Rangers just wasn't nailing down that position, and nobody else is doing it just now. and it's such an important role for a club like Rangers, is that number 9 position. And if Figure man's to play up there, he can't do it himself. It either needs to be a supporting striker or somebody in that 10 role, because when he's up there on his own, right now at this stage in his career, I just don't think he's capable of doing it yet. I think there's a future there for him. I think he could turn into a proper number 9, but right now he needs support in that position, because he just gets isolated in games when he's up there on his own. At least if he's playing it wide or he's playing behind, he can get involved and play a wee bit more. But he's the one we should be hanging our hats on. So going forward, it would be Figure man anywhere. Just play him.
Yeah, absolutely. I do have one small thing that I want us to quickly touch on, but before I do, let me just go into a wee bit of a plug mode. If you have enjoyed the show tonight and you like what you've seen, make sure you leave us that thumbs up and give us a like. And if you're not already subscribed to the Rangers Rabble podcast, why aren't you? Get yourself subscribed. You can also become a member for as little as a cup of coffee a month, for as little as $1.99, and it gets you all sorts of exclusive members-only shows. You get things like the Scottish Football Show, which I do every week. You get a wrestling show if you're into that. You get a movie review show if you like your films and you're a bit of film buff. There's a gaming show as well. There's even watch-alongs for you to enjoy as well. Those with headphones might want to turn the volume down, because if you sign up to become a member, this is the kind of content you'll get on a watch-along.
And how many times have you and me sat here, Alex, and said it?
Figure man! What a fucking goal! Hamza Figure man! Come on! Fucking on you go, son! What a goal! And it's...
If you ask me, that's well worth $1.99. Just for that alone, that is worth the price of admission. So there you go. Loads of great stuff. Get yourself signed up if you want to enjoy all of that. Okay, the phone lines are now closed, by the way, I should say. So unfortunately, no more time for phone calls. But we've got 2 minutes left. And so I'll ask both of you about a bit of news that broke a couple of hours ago. I say news. The club put out a tweet a couple of hours ago before we went on air. Next Friday, the day after we play Athletic Bilbao at Ibrox in the Europa League, the club will be offering tours of the stadium in Spanish for those who are coming over here to visit and who wish to come in and see everything that the club's all about. Experience Ibrox, which I think is a great thing. Seems though, Lewis, to have caused a wee bit of a stir in some circles on Twitter. There's some people really not happy now. Some of it seems to go back to, apparently, in the past, Bilbao fans have said that they like Celtic or whatever. Look, personally, I don't care. This is a business move from Patrick Stewart that's about, the globalisation of the club and getting the brand out there. And if these people decide to go and they're getting the tour in Spanish and they go back and say to their mates, listen, you need to get to Glasgow and visit Ibrox. Absolutely beautiful place. Brilliant. What an experience we had. That's what you want. You're trying to sell the brand of the club. So I'm not sure why people have taken such a strong issue with this, in some cases online.
It's baffling, isn't it? It's crazy. This day and age, it's like, how dare we want to, facilitate some of the Spanish fans getting to understand the Rangers tour, so they come in and enjoy some external entertainment out with the game. How dare we branch out and modernise with the rest of the footballing world? Such a stupid idea, honestly. No, in all seriousness, this is madness, isn't it? It's crazy that there's still people out there that are like this, because some section of Bilbao fans said that they like Celtic. Like, it's crazy. That's all I have to say in it before anything more gets said. It's baffling.
And, Jim Sloan has put in a £10 super chat. Thank you very much, Jim. Always a generous contributor to the rabble, I have to say as well, Jim. He says, great pod, lads, follow. Thanks so much, Jim. Absolute pleasure. Maybe we'll get you on the phone one of these days as well. But nonetheless, we appreciate your support immensely. Mark, last word from you then on this. Why are some people just mental? Why are people crackpots online about this sort of stuff? Like, surely it's a good thing for the club to be doing, and see if it makes a wee bit of extra cash and puts that into the old back pocket as well. Nothing wrong with it. I mean, to contextualise this, in Scotland, anybody can book a tour to Ibrox if they want. You don't have to be a Rangers fan. You know, you could be a Hibs fan and decide to book a tour to Ibrox when you're coming at the weekend. I'm not saying they will, and I'm not saying they should, but you can. You know, it is open to anybody to do, should they wish to do it. So why all of a sudden is it a problem because we're going to offer one in Spanish for people coming over from Spain?
No sé por qué. Don't know why. There you are, in Spanish. No idea.
Well, there we go. That's I think that's probably the best place to end it there. Nobody's going to upstage that. I know, Ian, I agree with you, but you know, Twitter is a strange place. But anyway, that'll do us. Stuart, Mark have immensely enjoyed that. That last hour has absolutely flown in, by the way. So that's been tremendous.
It's Lewis, by the way, not Stuart.
I did Lewis. Sorry, Lewis. My bad. Just the voice of Rabble God there chiming in for the heavens. But Lewis and Mark, thanks very much. The Rabble is back, of course, tomorrow with all your coverage for the game. We'll be here with the build-up to the game and then the watch-along tomorrow, which won't feature myself or Alex because we're both going to be at Ibrox enjoying it for ourselves in person. And then, of course, you'll have your reaction off the back of that tomorrow night. And then on Sunday morning, you'll have your random rabble at 11 o'clock, as always, as people get out of their beds, probably rough. And then, of course, you can round off your weekend on Sunday night with the Scottish Football Show. That'll be live with you at 8 o'clock. Until then, though, enjoy the rest of your weekends, and I really, really hope your team wins.